Welcome to Something More to Podcast, where we move through topics wherever the conversation takes us. I'm your host, Richard Collins.
And I'm Adam Culbertson. So we had talked about it before, about the school system and how they don't really teach you real life things. Last time we were talking about like elections and everything like that, and how you had mentioned in elementary school during the presidential election period, and I kind of vaguely remember something like that when I was in elementary school as well.
Right.
They did a mock voting and a mock election. But in high school, as we were also approaching a presidential election, like right after we graduated.
Right. Like when it really should matter, like even more.
Yeah. Nothing. Like we never touched on anything on that. So you leave school and you're like, okay, well, you're on your own with trying to figure out what to do there.
Yeah. And I mean, at least, and I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword, but at least now you have the internet, so that if you want to find out information, then you can.
Oh yeah.
But like back then, I mean, your only real hope like back then was like maybe trying to catch like some kind of speech on TV or like read in the newspaper or whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't easy to come by all that information to really kind of vet out like candidates if you didn't already know where to look.
Yeah. Yeah, Facebook wasn't even a thing.
Mm-mm.
I don't even think MySpace was a thing when we graduated high school.
Yeah, I don't think I really knew anything about MySpace until I was in college.
Yeah. So I actually came across this one guy last night. I was just going through random YouTube videos and it just popped up on my feed.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
It sounds vaguely familiar.
It's Robert Kiyosaki. Anyways, he came from I guess not a poor family, but like a poor mentality family. His dad was a PhD. He was the head of education at the school that he was going to as a kid, like 9 years old.
Okay.
And he basically asked his dad, he's like, well, why aren't they teaching us about money? And he was asking his teacher at school, like, why aren't you teaching us about money? Like, money's important. Because like because his dad was the head of education, he was at a rich school. And he noticed that he was poor and all the other kids at the school were rich and their parents owned everything in the town.
And I guess in comparison here, poor is like probably middle class.
Yeah. Yeah. But compared to them, like he was like at 9 years old, he realized he was poor.
Right.
Compared to his friends. And basically his dad was like, well, if you want to learn about money, ask your best friend's dad.
Jeez.
But his dad was talking about how the government doesn't allow them to teach kids about money. It doesn't, because their job is not to make money. Their job is to get a job.
I mean, I just got to say that goes against the entire founding idea behind capitalism.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, I was actually thinking about this some lately, and it's not even just that. It's the way that you have all these companies starting to monopolize everything, like actually goes against the spirit of capitalism.
Yeah.
I mean, when you can start consolidating all of this power into these like companies that then basically push everybody else out, like it's impossible to open small businesses anymore, aside from maybe restaurants.
Yeah.
Um,
It makes it really hard.
And yeah, it's like the entire idea behind capitalism is that everybody can do that. They can go out, they can make their own business, create jobs that way. And, even things like automation, the impact would be lessened a great deal if, you had that ability. Because even if you're automating, if you still have like, 100 different employers in a city, or like within a state, like 100 different companies that are all in the same vein, like there's that many more jobs than you would have if it was just a company.
Yeah.
Which,
and I haven't had a chance to read the book or anything. I just heard about it for the first time last night. It's actually on my list as my next download. So I'm gonna look into it and see what Ollie has to say about it. I thought the interview that I watched last night was really, really cool. It was on London People, something like that.
yeah.
But anyways, it kind of brought me back to a book that I read. I guess last summer. It was H. John Benjamin book.
Okay.
I think I told you about it.
You've told me bits from it.
It's called Failure is an Option.
Mm-hmm.
And something that he mentioned last night reminded me of that book, and that book is what's been driving me to try and find something for me to do.
Right.
Which led to me bringing up the D&D podcast, which led us to making this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what it keeps me motivated.
Right.
And H. John Benjamin, he does so many just silly things. Like he's a voice actor in like some of my favorite cartoons and everything. He's the main actor in it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also and I mean, you see him occasionally like live action.
Yeah,
but
a little bit here and there.
One that was, I guess, of particular note was like his appearances in Master of None.
Yeah.
Like, but he just is a fun guy. Like, he has a great personality.
Oh yeah. He's definitely been an inspiration to me in trying to get into voice acting and everything. But that's the thing, that most people don't see failure as an option, because the schools teach us that we will be punished if we fail.
Yeah.
We are trained from children to do exactly everything right and not go outside of the box and try to do things better.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we try to do things better, we try to do things different, we're going to fail, and there's consequences.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we need to be able to fail. We need to learn how to fail and adapt and learn from our mistakes. And that's not what school did. That's not what school did for me.
Don't think that's what school does for anybody.
Yeah. So it just, that made me think about that, and yeah, I'm trying to, like, I want to get better. I want to do more things, and I expect to fail. Where before I always avoided it, just because, I mean, just subconsciously we're taught to not fail,
mm-hmm.
and not try to do things.
Well, and if you think about it, it's really just it's all self-interest. Like, schools don't want to allow the opportunity to be able to like fail and learn and everything the way that human beings naturally do.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't look good on them. They get more funding if everybody's doing well and like everybody has high test scores and everything else. So they try and push that and push that and push that, because it's good for the school. It's good for, the principal and the district superintendent. Like, it looks good on them. Like, even to some extent, I would imagine with the teachers, it's part of a push, because if they can get more prestige as a school, they can get paid more.
Yeah. Yeah. And And like, think of how many teachers that teach a subject that don't actually use that subject in their everyday life or in their work.
Well,
how many math teachers, like calculus teachers and stuff like that, how many of them use calculus?
Well, one thing I want to kind of preface before like going any further in,
Mhm.
like there are definitely teachers that are in it to teach children, like they do.
There totally is. Yes.
But at the same time, like there's undoubtedly ones out there that are just out there to try and get by in whatever the way they can and try and get as much money as they can.
Because that's what we're trained to do. Is we're trained to get a job and get a paycheck.
Yeah, absolutely. And something further on that point about like usage of knowledge, I think what it comes down to is general knowledge is important.
Oh yeah.
But I think we take it too far in public schools. We get so focused on trying to do all of these maths and languages and science and everything else. And the vast majority of it, especially in like your high school years, doesn't really get used by anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they go into a specific field that uses it.
Yeah.
And so I think really by the time we get to high school, we need to start specializing our learning. Like, I mean, by the time you're in high school, you should already have a good general knowledge base, and you should start looking towards what you actually want to do as a career, like what you want to do with your life, and start to actually specialize your education towards that.
Yeah.
Like, I think waiting until college is ridiculous.
It really is. Like, to me, high school was just an extension of middle school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I hated it. I hated school. Like, I didn't make great grades.
And I mean, developmentally, like, I feel like people around that age, when you start getting into high school, and even some in middle school, you start having that drive to figure out, what you want to do with your life. And when you just don't have the ability to kind of explore that, then, by the time that you're asked to actually decide, like,
you don't know what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because you just crammed your head with a bunch of useless stuff that doesn't interest you.
Yeah.
Useless to the individual. It's not useless information, but...
Right. I mean, it's useful somewhere, but, I mean, you don't necessarily need to know anything about calculus if you don't go into mathematics or physics.
Yeah.
Like, calculus isn't really used anywhere outside of those fields.
Yeah. But that guy, what was his name? Robert Kiyosaki.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about how the best way he learned about money through his rich dad was playing Monopoly. And they'd sit down and play Monopoly, and he's like, okay, so when are you going to teach me about money? And he said, this is what it is. Like, and he's like, today I play Monopoly in the real world. I learned from my accountants. I learned from my lawyers. I learned from, we accomplish things as a team. And I learned from professionals in the field, not from a teacher that's teaching me a subject that they don't practice.
One thing that I want to point out is that kind of has some less than good implications.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Monopoly shouldn't really be a way that you look at money and finances and the way that money works in the world. I mean, to a large extent, it is the way that it works.
Yeah.
But that's a horrible mindset to have because, I mean, ask anybody. Monopoly is a cutthroat game.
Oh, it is.
Like, it is absolutely you versus everybody. And it's all about taking as much money from everybody else as you can.
Yeah. One thing about that is that instead of hiding the secrets of hiding the knowledge that the schools don't teach you, they train you basically to just be in your lane.
Mm-hmm.
Is that he's going out there and putting this information out there that, hey, like, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, this is what you need to do to succeed, whether it's money that you're wanting, or you're wanting to start a job, you want to be an entrepreneur. Like, you have to forget that failure has consequences. You have to learn that failure helps you develop and helps you learn.
Right.
And I think that's what he's doing differently than just going, hey, like, you got to play the real world like Monopoly. He's like, hey, you got to play the real world like Monopoly, but this is why. Because they don't want you to. And he's rich. Like, he's super rich. He owns all kinds of stuff, businesses and everything. But he's actually like, I don't want to keep this knowledge to myself. The rich people around me, they tell me, don't do that. And he's like, no, I'm gonna go out there and spread the things that people need to hear. Mm-hmm. So I think that makes him a better person in a way. You know, I don't know much about him. I just found him last night, actually.
Right.
But I do find it interesting. And it was kind of on something that I was already on as far as failure goes, from reading H. John Benjamin's book.
Right. And, you know, it's interesting that in a way, I guess you could say that comedians are kind of like the modern day philosophers, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know there's some people that go into like philosophy, but I mean, the ones who really get anywhere with it are mostly comedians. Mm-hmm. And there are some that have some extremely good insight.
George Carlin
was just amazing with it. I mean, yeah. And granted, everything he did was like a humorous kind of flair to it, but he had some very, very insightful comments.
He made you think.
Mm-hmm.
And that was basically like how he got big. Was he's like, you know what? I'm not going to just say funny stuff. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say things that people need to hear but don't want to hear.
Right.
I mean, I don't think that's an actual quote, but that's basically paraphrasing what he said in interviews and everything.
And yeah, and I mean, it's not like he's even the only one. Like, I mean, you have a number of them that I mean, comedy is almost nothing but observation. It's just kind of putting a flair on things that you've noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
And sometimes it's just things that you know, maybe strike you as funny. Sometimes it's things that are funny just because they're sad and depressing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes all you can do is just laugh.
Yep. Like the state of the nation, the world, everything, things that you personally don't have like direct influence on or anything like that, and you feel useless, and you're just like, well, here we go again.
Yeah. Although another guy that I'd only really found out about within the past year, and I think I've mentioned him before on the podcast, but Daniel Sloss.
Yeah.
Scottish comedian that's got a couple of specials on Netflix. But I mean, he had some very, very good points concerning offense in comedy. Because I mean, that's been kind of a hot topic for a handful of years now.
Yeah.
With people like Daniel Tosh or whoever that, you know, really push the envelope, get really edgy. And there's this whole debate about, you know, offense and what's offensive and what's not offensive, what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah.
And
who's allowed to say what?
Right. And Daniel Sloss's whole point of this is most of the time when people are getting offended about all of these kinds of things, they're getting offended on someone else's behalf.
Yeah.
Like, it's not them that has the condition or is of the race or gender or whatever necessarily, and they're getting offended because, oh, well, somebody else might be offended by this, so I should be offended.
Yeah.
And, I mean, in reality, depending on what it is, I mean, there are obviously some things that are not humorous at all and,
No.
and are intended to be hurtful or cruel. But I mean, if it's, actually humorous in the spirit of humor, comedy, like
It's basically a bit.
yeah, it's basically a bit. And I find that for the most part, people who are in those positions are pretty receptive to that kind of comedy because it doesn't paint them in this light as some kind of outcast. It makes them another person that you can make fun of the same as any other person.
Yeah.
I mean, they can take a joke. Like,
yeah.
if as long as it's not like cruel or hurtful. I mean, it's just people get bent out of shape for no real reason.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess, lends to this whole like SJW thing that's been going on for a long time now. It's just, people perceive this idea that somebody else is downtrodden and needs help and everything. And in a way, by trying to champion their cause for them, you're belittling them.
Yeah.
You're basically like saying, oh, well, I know you're just weak and helpless and you can't do anything about this, so I'll fight this fight for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Let people have a voice for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be politically correct for other people, other groups of people and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, like don't be an activist for them, but encourage them to speak out about things that they may be
if it offends them.
Yeah. But you shouldn't be the one that does that for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, that's the world we live in these days. Like, I think that there's so much focus on trying to be politically correct or PC.
It's another thing that is taught to us in school. It's another thing that we're trained to do. It's what is just getting more and more and more.
Well, and I mean, the thing is, like, it shouldn't be about what is quote unquote politically correct. It should be about, not just offending people for the sake of offending people. Like, if you're really not racist or sexist or whatever, just treat everybody normally, like you would a normal human being.
Yeah.
And and it's fine. Like,
treat everybody as equals. Don't call out one group saying, oh, well, they're offended by this phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, just like, let's just all be human beings and call it a day.
Right.
That's the easiest solution to everything. Stop viewing everything as, oh, well, this is offensive to this group of people. No, yeah. We're all fucking people.
Absolutely. And I've said it many times before, and I'll keep saying it, but we are far more alike than we are different.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
On I guess kind of related topic, there's been some recent news about an occurrence in North Carolina, I think it was, where a guy got into an argument with his girlfriend's son over Chevy or Ford.
That's still happening?
Yeah, that's still happening. But apparently this argument escalated to the point where he got a knife, tried to stab him, like his girlfriend got in the way. He ended up stabbing her, and then it didn't even de-escalate at that point. He gets a gun, tries to shoot him, like the girlfriend gets in the way again. Like, apparently he ends up shooting her, I think it was like 5 times in the leg.
What?
I mean, when it was all said and done, thankfully nobody was fatally injured. Like, it was, but it's just this idea that somebody would I mean, it's about 2 vehicle brands, like truck brands. Like, how does an argument like that get to the point where you're trying to kill someone?
Yeah, and somebody that wasn't even involved in the argument gets a knife and 5 bullets.
Yeah.
What? That's crazy.
And I mean, this is, his girlfriend at the time.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure not anymore. Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, even if you have some kind of like moment, crime of passion, like you just completely lose yourself, whatever, you would think that a normal, remorseful human being would have some kind of pause after they accidentally stabbed their girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like, Like, how do you then escalate that further?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the kind of like violence and vitriol that gets bred whenever you have those types of binary arguments.
Yeah.
Because it's basically setting everything up to right and wrong. And it's trying to eliminate like every shade of gray there is. It's why the whole two-party system is so bad. Like it's
if people will stab and shoot people over an argument over truck brands, like how many people are out there that'll do something that'll get angry about an argument in politics.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That actually affects our lives.
Absolutely. And it's not even quite binary, but you see the same kind of thing in religion.
Yeah.
Although sometimes it is. Like when you look at like in parts of the world, for example, like the Middle East, like it is kind of binary. It's this idea of like, like different factions of even the same religion.
Yeah.
That are at war with each other.
Oh, I mean, we got people here burning down churches because it's a Muslim church or it's a black church. And
especially on the Muslim note, it's all of this fear mongering that's been going around trying to push some kind of political agenda and band everybody against a common enemy. And there are innocent people, they're getting hurt by this.
There's more innocent than there are radicals.
Oh, absolutely. But everybody, like, there's been this push about like, oh, extremism in Muslim religion. And so all the Muslims are extremists and we're not safe as long as they're around. And, you hear this all the time. Like if you're in that echo chamber, you hear it constantly.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, there are people out there that are going to take that as some kind of threat. And there are people that just don't let threats like that go.
Yeah.
Like they're going to do something. Like they're going to burst out in violence.
Yeah. You say an echo chamber. I was actually doing some research on Venezuela and socialism because that's a big thing right now. Even to the point that our president is tweeting about it and then copy and pasting the tweet the next day. Okay. So I was looking into it, and the argument that Venezuela has failed because of socialism, and it's the inevitable outcome of socialism in any country, in any state or whatever. Because that's the argument. That's all you see.
That is the argument. Yes.
That's what Fox News pushes. That's what every conservative news source, news media.
Yeah. They hold up Venezuela as an example of why socialism doesn't work.
Yes. And the last two presidents for Venezuela pushed socialist policies and everything, and that's been their main focus is socialism. The thing is, the decline of their economy started 21 years before the first president that was pushing socialism.
Now, if you really want to talk about what brought about the ruin of Venezuela, it all comes down to one thing and one thing alone. Lack of diversification.
Yep. Oil.
Everything was in oil.
Yep.
And so when the oil market took a dive, that's it. Like, that was their economy.
Yep. It started going down 21 years before they even started having socialist policies. So socialism has nothing to do with their economy taking a dive like it did.
Yeah.
It started way before. And I don't think a lot of people know that.
Well, I mean,
or at least not in that echo chamber. The people in that echo chamber are not hearing this. They're hearing that socialism bad. Socialism will be the end of America.
And I would dare say, because I mean, even in any other line, I mean, that's not easy information to come by. Like, no. That's not something that just kind of lightly browsing the news you're really going to learn.
No, you have to actually look for it. Like I had to look for it and I had to scroll. to figure it out, and it all came down to so there was a protest. It was the Caracazo protest. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but they were protesting the democracy and the model of using oil as their main source of wealth for the country. And it wasn't working then, and it's not working now. And that's what our leaders, or at least the GOP, are trying to do is to stay in oil, stay in coal, and it's not a sustainable.
I mean, again, it comes down to really the lack of diversification. You can ask like any business person, like if you put all of your eggs in one basket, if you focus on one single market, if anything happens to that market, you're done.
Yeah.
Like that, you can't just, wave a magic wand and just bring back business in that market. Like, and it's not like you can just suddenly jump into another market, like whenever that happens. Like, that's why you have to plan, you have to diversify.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like investing in stocks. Like, it's extremely boom or bust to basically put everything in one stock. Like, it might work out and you might be rich, but at the same time, something could happen, it could tank, and then you have nothing.
Yeah.
That's why it's all about diversifying, like having your investments in multiple places.
Yeah. And here's one way to look at it. Okay, so all the countries in the United Nations, they're most of them are pushing for clean energy.
Right.
They're wanting to get away from oil. They're wanting to get away from coal. A lot of countries are making really good progress already. I don't remember specific countries, but I see in news all the time like, oh, this country has shut down all their coal plants and focusing on wind or focusing on solar,
right,
and everything. And for the first time, they're having a massive shutdown on coal plants, for example. If the rest of the world, or the majority of the wealthy nations in the world, all get away from oil, all get away from coal, we stay on oil and coal, we're fucked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the problem, because as the demand decreases, which is what is happening,
yeah,
like the price decreases, and so we're not getting as much for the same effort.
Yeah, and the GOP, they're pushing for us to drill more, dig more, drill more, dig more, because we have so much oil over here. Why are we going to Saudi Arabia to get oil? Why are we going to Iraq to get oil when we have oil here? We need to drill more. Well, I mean, we need to more pipelines, everything like that.
I don't have any like hard facts that I can reference to corroborate this, but one of the things
that's just arguments that I've had.
Yeah, one of the things that I've read multiple times, and again, I don't have anything to necessarily corroborate this, but is that we've been more or less stockpiling for a long time now.
Yeah.
And in a way, you could almost think of like, and not everybody, some people it's an environmentalist effort, but for some, it almost seems like the idea of preventing drilling in Alaska is more so just to try and keep a reserve.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But I do know we have a very big reserve of it, but a reserve will eventually run out if we're not getting oil anymore.
Right. And I mean, that at best, the way that things are going, at best, that reserve would basically serve to prevent us from having to update for a longer time, because we can sustain ourselves off of the reserve.
Yeah.
But the actual worth, the actual value of that reserve is only going down.
Yeah. Yeah. How awesome would it be to have electric cars? Like, all of us have electric cars. We could go outside and not fucking breathe in smog and shit.
It would be great. Although, I do want to point out, with current manufacturing processes, it is something that is going to have to be a very slow process.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
current manufacturing processes, especially for the batteries that are used, actually do have a pretty decent amount of pollution attached to them.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't really want to just have everybody just stop using their combustion vehicles right now and just buy an electric car.
Oh, no.
Now,
That's not even realistic.
Now, if your vehicle is already done, it's already through with, like it's run its course and everything, then yeah, buy a hybrid or an electric, like as a new car. But you shouldn't just ditch a car that's already working to buy an electric.
Oh yeah. And no, I wasn't talking about it like immediate.
I'm not saying you necessarily are, but I feel like that's an important point to make.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's not going to be an overnight change. It's not even going to be a 10-year change. Like, we're talking about like 30, 50 years before we would even come close to cycling out all of fossil fuel driven machines.
Right. And like I said, it's going to be a long process. Like, if we could update manufacturing processes, if we could find a way to manufacture these batteries or manufacture other batteries that are as powerful that don't cause as much pollution, it might be a different story. I mean, we can just basically flood the market with them and it's just all good for anybody upgrading, basically.
Yeah.
But at current time, like the extra environmental impact from manufacturing all the cars, if everybody were to just suddenly decide that they wanted an electric vehicle right now, would be at least as bad as what we have currently.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of the whole vegan thing.
Mm-hmm.
And not all vegans are bad, of course, but saying that vegan causes less harm to animals and stuff like that is an unrealistic thing too, because how many animals die in the fields whenever crops are being pulled up? Like hundreds of rabbits and mice and everything. It's not
it's about
unharmful to
it's
them.
about which animals.
Yeah.
The most visible get the most attention.
Yeah. You don't see all the rabbits and snakes and everything just being chopped up in the tractors and everything.
And now I will say that overall, growing plants per yield takes less space than raising cattle.
Yeah.
But in both cases, you're still basically displacing an environment.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're basically messing up a local ecosystem.
Yeah. And I mean, because I read some vegan stuff on Instagram and Reddit and everything, and it's just like people think that they're better than us because we eat meat, because we kill cows, but there's hundreds of thousands of animals being killed to produce more crops.
Well, and I think that attitude right there, that whole like better than you attitude, is really the reason why people are generally against vegans and veganism.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem if you don't want to eat meat. You don't have to eat meat. If I want to eat meat, why should you care what I eat?
Right. And in all honesty, like I'm kind of the mind that I like the way that technology is developing, and that we're starting to do like lab grown meat and things like that.
That's pretty cool.
Like I've seen some things about 3D printed meat, where it basically takes like plant fiber, and just prints out like a steak, for example, which supposedly they've actually managed to get to taste and really the texture, more importantly, to be very similar to actual meat.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I think the texture really is a large part of the appeal of the taste.
It is, yeah.
Because when they're 3D printing it, it's not just oh, well, here's a blob of meat.
No.
It's printing out like the fibers the same way that you would have like in an actual steak.
Yeah. Huh. That's pretty interesting. I didn't know they were 3D printing vegetable meat.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly how far along that is. Like, I'm not sure if this is something that we might actually see a consumer version of, like in 5 years and 10 years, like whatever. But,
Yeah. I didn't know they were growing meat.
Mm-hmm. But it's the fact that you have these kinds of advancements, because it's those types of things that could still allow us to have meat, but kind of take away a lot of the drawbacks, like the excessive amount of land that it takes to raise cattle.
Yeah, let's let nature take back that land.
Mm-hmm.
But that that's not going to be the way it goes. That land's going to be taken up with apartments and skyscrapers
and parking lots.
And parking lots, yes. So many parking lots.
Well, I mean, that's kind of one of the problems with how this country developed versus a lot of other countries, is because a lot of other countries, cities were already pretty well established. And so it's not like they could just go putting roads wherever they wanted, like just at a whim. So in most of those cases, they had to find other solutions, and thusly developed a lot of public transit. And so there's a lot more, foot traffic, public transit going on in a lot of major foreign cities. But here, most of our major cities were developed after the advent of the car, or at least really developed like to the city that they are now after that fact.
Yeah.
And so it's all about like road layouts. And originally, like, the roads weren't for vehicles. Originally it was for things like, horse-drawn carriages and things like that. People would walk in the streets. I mean, it was just a place for people to travel.
Yeah.
And the automobile industry basically took that over and was just like, okay, no, roads are just going to be for cars now, and we want everybody to have cars.
Yeah.
And even to the point where the term jaywalking, like, I'm sure you've heard it. Everybody's heard it. That was actually an invention of the powers that be, to try and make this negative light upon somebody actually walking in the street. It doesn't really make a lot of sense now, but back then, a jay was like a derogatory term for like a hick. Like a hick or a hillbilly or whatever.
Oh, they don't know how we city folk do it.
Yeah, so I mean, they were basically just, oh, well, look at that jaywalker over there, like some kind of hick, like walking around in the streets, like he doesn't know any better.
Yeah, where's this car at?
And yeah, I mean, so it's really kind of pushing that idea, like, oh, well, if you're not a jay, then obviously, you have a car, you just stay out of the street altogether.
Oh yeah.
And it was that kind of attitude that led to us developing our cities around that. Like, things are a lot more spread out. Like, you couldn't just walk from one place to another very easily in most cities. And with the prevalence of cars, how many of them, the amount of space that we take up in parking alone is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, even in cities where you have like parking garages, like, even those take up a massive amount of space. I mean, it's basically like, even, you could say Charlotte. I mean, it's like every parking garage is as far as real estate area that it takes up, it's a whole nother building.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, with as spread out as everything is, and the fact that we don't have a stellar public transit system, it's, you have to have one every few blocks.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you drive into Charlotte and you see buildings, parking garage, buildings, parking garage, parking garage.
And most large buildings, like the huge skyscrapers, often have their own parking garage. And there are a few cases where it's actually pretty good. Like, I think the Duke Energy Commission building, like, their parking is pretty much all below ground, like under the building.
Yeah. Okay.
But not every place is like that.
No, they're
and
not.
It's not something that you can really do with a skyscraper after it's put in.
No.
Like, once it's there, and digging under it would be a horrible idea.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things where industry and really corporate greed have guided the way that our country has developed. And there's a lot of these things that are just ingrained into what life is like here, and where people don't even know like the ways that we've been manipulated.
Yeah, and they're still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why they give politicians money, so the politicians will do what they want to do.
Yeah,
and so they can make more money, so they can do whatever they want, really, without any repercussions or bailouts.
I mean, and it's like there's so many examples. I mean, we could be here all day just talking about examples of where a company has, either put out some kind of essentially smear campaign to try and by proxy promote their business or their industry, or just outright paid politicians to get things to happen. But I mean, basically molding reality around you.
Yeah.
And the common person is none the wiser that it's even happening.
Yeah. Like creating traditions.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like engagement rings.
Yep. Yep. Diamonds.
Yeah. Diamonds. One of the most worthless, expensive things that you'll ever buy.
Yep. Yep, but everybody buys it because everybody's got to have an engagement ring. Everybody's got to have a big diamond on their finger.
Yeah. Just complete fabrication. It was never a tradition prior to, I think it was De Beers that pushed it.
Yeah. And hell, even the flag company doing the Pledge of Allegiance that's mandatory in all public schools here.
Yeah.
Was created by a flag company to sell flags.
Yeah.
But that's mandatory, and if you refuse to stand up and pledge allegiance to God in this country, why? I don't understand why that's mandatory. If a separation of church and state, like public schools, is a state-run thing, it shouldn't have anything to do with God.
Right.
You don't stand up, you get sent home. If you keep doing it, you get kicked out of school because you didn't stand up and pledge allegiance blindly to something that you don't know what the fuck it is, because they don't really teach you about it.
Right. No, you're just basically told and expected to just kind of drone on along with everybody else.
Yeah. It's just, like you said, we could just go on and on and on about that, but those are a few examples, and they were really easy to say.
I know, like the sugar industry demonizing fat.
Yep.
I mean, like, and oftentimes these things are at the complete detriment of the American people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you want to know why the American country has such a reputation for being fat or obese?
Yeah, we have the most obese people than
like
anywhere.
That shift from fat to sugar, I believe wholeheartedly, is the number one contributor to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we're all addicted to it.
Mm-hmm. It's insane how much sugar is in stuff. Mm-hmm. And you never really notice until you start looking at labels.
Yeah.
It's like from going on like the keto diet, where you start paying attention to like carbohydrates and in particular sugars.
You find out how much stuff is out there.
It is insane.
Yeah.
And it's in everything.
Yeah. Luckily, a lot of these companies are pushing zero sugar stuff. I mean, there's still aspartame there, then that's a whole nother story.
And I mean, there are developments that are coming in with it. You have things like sugar alcohols that are coming.
Xylitol is one of them,
right? But it's like, it's just that idea that pervaded everything for so long. I mean, it was all fat-free this, fat-free that. Like, you just got to take the fat out of everything. But in order to make it taste good, we just got to load it down with sugar.
Mm-hmm. The whole food pyramid thing that you learn about in school. Like, this is how you eat. And I thought it was really funny how on South Park, they're like, oh, Cartman gets a vision, and you got to turn the pyramid upside down. It's really it's that simple.
Yeah,
like that's how fucking skewed they made it, just on false claims, false, like paying for false studies to be pushed and everything like that, to where we were doing the exact opposite of what we were supposed to be doing, and that's why all of us are obese.
Yeah. And it all comes down.
Our dicks
to,
aren't flying off, though.
That's true. That's very true. But it's like it all kind of boils down to that in this country, we basically let companies run rampant and do anything and everything that they want to do in order to make their business work.
Oh yeah.
And so it becomes less about healthy competition and improvements and things like that, or even just salesmanship, and it becomes about trying to manipulate things and try and change the rules to work in your favor, or
it's just deception.
Yeah, just outright lying to people about things. I mean, it becomes about just manipulating people to buy your stuff rather than about trying to be the best product so people will buy it.
Yeah, and that lowers the quality of the products in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, we have little to no oversight of this in the government.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So, a more happier change of topic. I've been watching The Tick on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And most of what I watched of the Tick cartoon was when I was a kid, so I didn't retain a lot of what it was. the wild blue yonder.
Oh, I mean, it was pretty off the wall. At least, like, I have kind of a working memory of like the original Tick cartoon, like the just zany villains and things like that, like Chairface.
Yeah.
Who was trying to carve his name into the moon with a giant laser.
Yeah.
Or Tick and his catchphrase, spoon.
Yeah. I don't think because I'm at like episode 7 in season 2, and there's 10 episodes in season 2. I don't remember how many. There might have been 10 in the first season.
Right.
But he hasn't said spoon, but I mean, it still keeps that the same just goofiness about it. And I was dying on this one part where he goes in and they're testing Arthur and they're testing the Tick on to see what category of a hero they are based on their powers and everything. Of course, Arthur is not a category. Right. He's just got a suit.
He just does a wingsuit.
Yeah.
He's a moth.
Yeah. And it's bulletproof and all kinds of stuff. Like it's a pretty cool suit, and he's got a lot of gadgets with it, but
he's like Batman.
He's still
without
learning
the money or the like ridiculous intelligence.
Yeah, and he has really bad anxiety, and he's not confident at all.
Right. He's what, like an accountant? I think?
Yeah, he's an accountant. Yeah. So there's an arm wrestling machine. It's a super strong machine. They're like, oh, it's pretty advanced, but it doesn't look that advanced. And it's this machine that's like unfolding and everything, and then an arm, really strong robot arm, comes out of the hole and like it's like squeezing its fist and everything, like trying to get them to grab it. And Arthur grabs it, and it just immediately throws him into the wall. The Tick gets up to it, and he grabs it, and it's not even moving him, and it's just you just hear the machine just whirring, and he's like talking trash to the machine the whole time, just being the Tick, and he eventually just breaks the arm and rips it out of the machine, and then while Arthur and the scientists are talking, like the Tick's just trying to put the arm back in the machine in the hole it came out of, and he turns around backwards and like gathers up all the cords and everything, and he stuffs it in, and he's like, fixed it. I lost it because he spent so much time just trying to get it in there while they're talking.
And I tell you, like, I guess when it really kind of comes down to it, and I didn't really think much on this, like in the cartoon, because I mean, it was a cartoon. I just enjoyed it. I didn't really put much thought into it otherwise. but the Tick basically exists as a basically just a parody of like the normal superhero.
Yeah.
Like it takes a lot of those same kind of tropes and a lot of those same kinds of things that happen in comics and just parodies it.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of it's a great work. Like it's a lot of fun. Like at least the cartoon was. I still need to check out the new series.
Oh, it's so good, and it's only 30-minute episodes. So I mean, you could binge watch it pretty quick.
Yeah. Definitely on my watch list.
Yeah, the ends of the episodes. Sometimes it ends and it's got a cliffhanger, and it's not anything like super funny or anything. It's just a cliffhanger, and then you got things where one of my friends, Brian, he got me to watch it. He was like, I have this fan theory, and I want to talk to somebody about it. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna watch it. I'm almost done now, so I'm gonna figure out what his theory is.
Okay.
But apparently in the first season they only did half a season, and then they stopped it, did a cliffhanger, and then finished the rest of it later. And the Terror is the villain in the first season, and like they show him for the first time since like he was gone or something like that, and he just pops out and he's like, cliffhanger. It's so funny.
Yeah.
And I just the episode I just finished before we started recording. There's some drama going on, and it just ends with drama. It cut the credits.
Nice. Oh, man.
But you have all the silly shit. Like there's a guy that's called Edgelord, and everything he says is what an edgelord would say.
Edgy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think
it's a modern day Tick, like with jokes and references of modern day stuff. And I think it's brilliant.
Like all in all, I think that this has been a good move, like getting these streaming services like Netflix and Amazon and such, because the content that they're putting out, like the original content that they're putting out, I think is generally speaking of a higher quality than what most other places have done.
Oh yeah,
because it becomes less about trying to serve like what you perceive as the average person, and it becomes more about just serving a particular niche.
Yeah.
In a way that's kind of like what HBO has been doing for years. Where I mean, they, as HBO, typically have only really served like one type of audience, but the entire idea was, they're trying to serve the people that would buy HBO.
Yeah.
So they put out stuff that audience enjoys. And so they have that more singular focus and can put out a better product. It's not about like, a board of directors that are getting together and going, well, I think that we should do this to try and appeal to this other audience so that we can try and draw them in.
Yeah.
It's, okay, well, you're with HBO, then we just need to put out something that you will enjoy because you're buying HBO, and we want you to continue buying HBO.
Yeah.
They're not really trying to look for new audiences so much as they're just trying to provide a service. And I feel like it's the same thing going on with, like, say, Netflix. Except for Netflix at this point has expanded to the point where they're appealing to all walks of life, like all the niches pretty much.
Yeah.
But they're not trying to appeal to every niche with any given show.
Yeah.
Like each show has its audience, and they just oftentimes it seems like Netflix even just kind of lets creators do whatever they want.
It does seem that way, yeah.
Like it's just they're like, okay, well, you want to make this kind of show? Go for it. Yeah. And as long as it's popular, as long as it's what people want to watch, Netflix wins.
Yeah. That's like Adam Sandler. Like the stuff that he's doing. Like I don't know if you've watched many of the movies that he's put out.
I've seen Ridiculous Six and The Do-Over.
They're really good.
I thought so. I think that they are probably his best movies in a long time.
Yeah, and you could tell that it seems like Netflix just let him do his thing,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't force him to go any direction with it or anything like that, and it comes off as Adam Sandler.
Yeah,
it doesn't come off as somebody else did it.
right.
And Adam Sandler's in it.
And
It comes off like 100% Adam Sandler and David Spade.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it was like straight up like one of his old comedies, but I mean
it's way different than his like Billy Madison. Like
right.
Billy Madison was just ridiculousness through the whole thing. It was just like an extension of Saturday Night Live, basically.
Right. And I mean when it comes down to it though, like you have to kind of realize that people grow, people change, like people develop. You can't really expect if like, he's been making all of these movies, he had this stretch where he was doing things that were a little more serious, or sometimes things that were completely serious, like movies like Spanglish,
Yeah.
which is actually a fantastic movie.
Mm-hmm.
Or things that were kind of half funny, half serious, things like Click or 50 First Dates.
Yeah.
That kind of had their more serious tones to them.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it before. Funny People. That's another. That's another good. And that's like really sad.
Oh yeah. But that all of this stuff kind of builds into like the person that he is now, like the comedian and the writer that he is now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't really expect his new stuff to be like his old stuff.
Yeah.
If anything, it seems, and I mean, it's still comedy, it's still lampoonish, especially like Ridiculous Six.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's kind of matured.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I don't know. I've never seen anything negative about it. Maybe not. I don't remember.
Well, I mean, aside from just the random like, oh well, Adam Sandler doesn't do anything good anymore.
It's not like Happy Gilmore. It's not like Big Daddy.
Yeah, and you see the same thing with Mike Myers too.
Yeah,
where there's so much just general hate, I think, for practically everything that he does outside of like Shrek and like Austin Powers.
Yeah,
and it's like really, I mean, Love Guru is still one of my favorite movies from him, but you get so much hate for it just in general.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many people out there that are just like, oh, the movie's horrible.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, yeah, it had some kind of lowbrow humor moments, but oftentimes it was this kind of weird juxtaposition where it was lowbrow humor done in a clever way. And so, I don't know. I really appreciate Mike Myers from, even his early stuff like So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Oh, yeah, I love that movie.
All the way up through. He's a great comedian. Like, I love his writing. I keep hearing rumors that he's going to go back to Austin Powers, and I'm sure that that's what a lot of people want. And I mean, admittedly,
I wouldn't be disappointed.
I would be all for it myself. But it's like I just want him to do stuff again.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Because
I think the most recently he pops up on Saturday Night Live every now and then.
And I mean, really he has like smaller parts in some movies.
Yeah.
Like in Bohemian Rhapsody or
see, I didn't see that.
Or in Wonder Woman, I think.
Oh,
maybe. I think he was like one of the British military officers, maybe.
You know what? I saw something that he's in on Hulu. It's a Hulu original. It has something to do with a train, and he's like the train conductor. Or something. It looked like it, like in the. I don't know. I don't remember the name of it, and I haven't watched it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something.
But it kind of feels like in recent years, though, it's like Shrek is like the big thing that he does.
Yeah. I pull up Michael Myers, and it pulls up Halloween.
Yeah, just look up Mike Myers.
Mike Myers.
Oh, no, the military role, like what it was Inglourious Bastards was the one where he was a British military officer.
That's right. I completely forgot he was in there.
Yeah, I mean, and it was subtle. Like it was not very played up. It's not like it was a funny or humorous role, really. And I mean, it was just kind of like he was there. Like it wasn't like made a big deal of or anything.
Yeah, I can't find it quickly. For some reason.
But yeah, I mean, looking through, like he's barely done anything in recent years.
Or maybe it was on Netflix. They're talking about him doing a 6-episode comedy series on Netflix. But yeah, I'll find that. I'll find, because I see it scrolling through stuff. It's on my to watch list. So I'll figure out what it is and tell you.
Yeah.
But anyways, one thing that I think Amazon Prime has done pretty cool with.
Mm-hmm.
It's failed me once before, but they put out a pilot and then they allow the viewers to vote on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one that I voted for was Zombieland.
Yeah.
The series.
Right.
And I liked the movie. Hell, I even liked the pilot that they did. They had different actors and everything.
Right.
I think I saw something about them maybe doing a sequel with the same actors. I don't know. I don't know a whole lot on that. I don't know if it's even happening, but I did see something like within the last year on maybe the talks of a Zombieland 2.
Okay.
But they were trying to do a Zombieland series, which is what Zombieland was originally supposed to be. The Zombie of the Week was because of it was going to be a TV show.
Right.
But I guess not enough people voted on it, or they didn't get signed to do more than the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
But the Tick was one of them, and I voted for the Tick, along with a couple other things, and the Tick finally came out, and then I just never watched it till recently.
Right.
But I think that's pretty cool. Like, let the viewers vote on what they want to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Netflix has kind of done it better, where they just like they get approached with something and they're just like, okay, yeah, here's money.
Like, here, take our money. Just make the show, whatever.
Yeah.
And you know, it's because of that attitude that you have some very prominent creators that are going to Netflix.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, they basically are the place for stand-up comedy now.
Yeah, everybody's getting off of Comedy Central.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people are making that move over.
Like a ton of huge comedians, a ton of ones you haven't heard of before. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, they're putting out like probably at least 4 or 5 different specials every month at least.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's my go-to place for stand-up comedy now.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of already was with all the old stuff that they had on there.
Yeah, because, I mean, they got a lot of the old stuff, and then they, like, even since, like, the earlier times of the streaming service, they've been putting out, like, you know, Netflix original comedy specials.
Yeah.
And they got some pretty big names, even pretty early on.
Jim Gaffigan was one of the early ones.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just hilarious.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. and so, I mean, you know, you have stuff like that. You have stuff where, you know, they had like Brad Pitt come do a movie basically called War Machine.
Oh,
nothing to do with the comics.
Oh no, I figured that. I don't think Marvel would have allowed that.
Well, I mean, this was a couple of years ago, I think now. But but anyways, I mean, you have people like, you know, Adam Sandler that did contracts to do several movies. I think like 6 movies or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you have people like Nick Kroll, like doing his cartoon Big Mouth.
Yeah, I love Big Mouth. and see, he was doing stuff with Comedy Central.
Mm-hmm.
And who had
The League?
The League, yeah.
FX maybe?
Was that FX? Yeah, that makes sense. FX. But Big Mouth, it's hilarious.
It really is. I mean, it is great. It's brilliant. It's well thought out. They have some good meta humor in it too.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they break the fourth wall
mm-hmm.
quite a bit. Especially the hormone monster.
Oh yeah. Maurice.
Yeah. But even Nick, like the character he plays himself basically as a kid.
Yeah.
He breaks the fourth wall. Like it's funny.
But yeah, it's a great show. Definitely looking forward to more episodes of it.
Yeah.
Bill Burr's cartoon, F is for Family.
F is for Family.
I mean, it's great.
I'm behind on it. I've only watched the first season, but it's a really good show.
Definitely something to get caught up on at some point.
Yeah.
It hasn't been too terribly long since the third season came out, so it's probably going to be a while before new episodes.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Get through the episodes. Is there 30 minutes?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty easily bingeable show.
Yeah.
Like if anything, I thought season 2 felt too short.
Oh yeah. That's the way it feels a lot of times with a good show.
Mm-hmm.
Man. I wish we could talk about Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's really fresh, but at the same time, definitely want to avoid spoilers as much as possible, especially within a week of the episode coming out.
Yeah. Now, I will say this. The way the episodes are done this season, I guess this year works too, but the way the episodes are done, like the episode finishes, and instead of me feeling like that episode wasn't long enough or anything like that, I feel like we're finally getting closure episode to episode. Like, yeah, it leaves like, oh, well, you know what's going to happen next episode because they've built up to it from like the first episode, second episode, and then now the third one.
Right.
It leaves that like something is about to happen. But the way the episode, the format of it is and everything, and just the storytelling, like at the end of the episode, I was like, man, that's a good episode. It's not like, oh man, I gotta fucking watch the next episode now.
Well, it's a way of kind of keeping tension and interest up without necessarily leaving everything on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
They're doing a very good job with that, where they're still kind of bringing a close to the episode, like they're kind of wrapping things up, but at the same time they're alluding to what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. And I'm loving the breakdowns of especially this last episode. I'm loving the breakdowns in the D&D community on Reddit.
Yeah, like kind of putting things in D&D terms.
Yes. It's perfect. Like it is totally what players would do.
I've always loved those types of comparisons just in general. Like putting things in terms of like, oh, well, you know, if this was a D&D session, this is how it would go down.
Oh, okay, Druid, what are you doing? I'm sitting there. Okay, well, I'll come back to you. Okay, Druid, what are you doing now? I stare at him.
I hold my action.
I hold my action. I want to see what the rogue does.
Yeah. Oh man. Always a lot of fun. And all in all, just kind of general vagary. Like I'm really happy with how Game of Thrones is going. Like undoubtedly, I do feel like if George R.R. Martin ever actually finishes the books are going to be a lot better. But I think that's kind of one of the confines of trying to do just a show in general based on books, but even more so when you're trying to do the show first.
Yeah. And I don't think it was intentionally planned that way originally.
Well, I mean, he put out the 5th book like a couple of months after the show started. I think everybody thought we'd at least have the 6th book by now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was watching an interview with him and Stephen King, and he was like, "How do you write so much? Like, how do you finish books?"
Well, you know, in Stephen King's case, he keeps things short,
yeah,
and to the point.
Yeah, he does.
like he doesn't really ramble on about this, that, or whatever else.
He doesn't really do trilogies and
no. I mean, there's a couple of like
stuff.
books that lead into other books or that
Yeah.
are connected, but for the most part, he just tells his story and he's done.
Yeah.
And he really is, like, more than anything, like a prolific, like, essay / short story writer.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a lot of great books.
Mhm.
Like countless. I don't know how many.
Oh, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, when it's all said and done, like, Stephen King's style of writing is very different from George R.R. Martin's.
Oh, it is. It is.
George R.R. Martin's, it kind of makes sense that it takes forever because there's so many little details that go in here and there, and this is connected to that. And I mean, it's like even understanding like all of the little political connections throughout the book series. You almost have to like get one of those like missing person boards or something, like the investigation boards, like tying string and like running it from this character to this character.
Yep, and then you X out a character, and then the whole dynamic of everything changes.
Oh yeah, and I mean it goes even further beyond because in a way he's kind of, to an extent, not entirely, but mimicking J.R.R. Tolkien in some of the ways that he's adding detail into the world to kind of bring it to life. Because even in the book series, you have like, you know, songs and things that, you know, either they're pre-existing songs that have existed long before, or sometimes like songs that appear based on events that happened earlier in the books, like, you know, because it's a living world.
Hell,
like,
languages even.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and I mean it's not as extensive as like Tolkien did.
No.
Like, I mean, Tolkien completely invented languages.
Yeah.
But you still have those like bits of like, you know, made up languages that are kind of put in throughout. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, adding those kinds of details that I think really makes the books and the show by proxy as good as they are. But it's also, I think, why it takes him so long per book, because there's just so much there to try and piece together and like weave like into a complete cohesive story.
Yeah. Now, does he have like? Do you know like if he has a plan? Like if he doesn't finish the books before he passes, like does he have a plan for somebody to take the reins on that?
I do not know. The only thing I've really heard on that is supposedly he went through like the basic plot lines for the show creators.
Yeah, like they went off of his notes to do the seasons that he hasn't written yet.
Right. So I mean, you can expect that it's at least passingly similar to like what the books would be or will be.
Yeah, so that might be it. If he does pass before he releases the last two books or the last book.
Well, supposedly, and I don't know if this has changed at all, but supposedly he was planning 7 books.
Yeah. Well, what's it at now?
There are 5 books. We're waiting on the 6th.
Yeah,
and it's been like 10 years almost since since book 5 came out.
That's crazy. It's crazy to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been,
and this is the final season. Like we've been out of the books, or what the current books for the last season was whenever it left it, right? Or was it the season before that? The
season, like last season was definitely uncharted territory, at least for the most part. I believe it was the season 6. Like I believe that not entirely was like the 5th book, but I think that kind of ended up in the same place as the 5th book.
Okay.
Like it was kind of starting to split off, like do things a little differently, get into some stuff that either won't happen in the books or hadn't happened in the books yet.
Yeah.
But I think that it ended up leaving off at pretty much the same place as the 5th book.
Okay.
But either way, I would be very interested for George R.R. Martin to actually finish the books.
Oh yeah, I mean the books are good. Like,
because I mean,
I like the differences.
It wouldn't be the first time that an author wasn't able to finish their book series and somebody else had to come in and do it.
Yeah.
Like you look at Dune. That was the case with Dune, where his son had to come in and basically finish using his notes.
Yeah.
You look at another big series is Wheel of Time. Massive book series. But the author passed away before he could really even get close to finishing.
Yeah. Oh,
so they basically brought another person in to basically write the rest.
okay.
And I haven't actually read Wheel of Time myself, but
Yeah, I haven't.
multiple people that I've talked to have read it. It seems to be kind of one of those like low key, like really big nerdy book series.
Oh, really?
like it's something that you probably wouldn't hear about normally,
Yeah,
but
I had no
I've just
clue.
talked to the right people.
Oh, okay. We'll have to check it out.
But yeah. And so it's not unheard of to have that type of situation, but I mean, I'd really like to see at least the 6th book come out before he passes.
Yeah, it'd be nice. It's so weird the way that they're described in the book to how you see them in the show.
Oh yeah. There's some times where it's like they look nothing in the show like they're described in the book.
No, like even down to the hair color.
Yeah, like Dario's purple hair.
Yeah, it's because I watched the show first and then read the books, and it's just I picture, to start off with, I was trying to picture them as the characters in the show, and that it was just naturally doing that.
And then you just read this one line like, wait, what?
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh, well, now I picture them different.
Yeah.
And there's a little conflict there in my brain on the way they look whenever I'm on the book.
Yeah, and I mean it happens with just about everything. Like, to a certain extent, like your mental images are kind of painted by the things that you've seen.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of that way with like Harry Potter, because it was weird for me with Harry Potter because I read the books before like I ever saw any of the movies. And in all honesty, I never even watched any of the movies past the 5th one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My favorites were the last 2 movies.
Yeah, I mean, I'd heard that it got better and everything. It's just I was pretty frustrated with the 5th movie myself.
They cut to make it. I think what they should have done with some of the earlier movies is what they did with the last 2, splitting it into more parts, because some of those books were just massive.
Especially when you got to like books 4 and 5.
Goblet of Fire was a very disappointing movie.
Oh, I mean they had to cut out at least half of the story.
Yeah,
like the entire like house elf liberation.
Yeah.
Like it just pretty much gone, written out.
Like
Dobby was no longer the one helping Harry through everything.
Yeah,
like he got help from like Neville Longbottom.
Neville. Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, there were definitely a lot of things that I didn't like, but the straw that kind of broke the camel's back for me was in the 5th movie, the way that they just kind of shrugged off like Sirius Black's death.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel bad about spoilers at this point.
No, it's long gone.
I mean, it's been so many years now since the book or the movie.
There's no worries about spoilers.
It's not quite the same as like running out the day the book releases and just yelling "Snape kills Dumbledore."
Yeah, and I don't think people that are like kids are listening to they shouldn't be.
They should not be. You're right. But it was like it was just in the books, like reading the book. It was such a huge emotional moment, like when Sirius Black died.
Yeah.
And even more so, just kind of expounded by the fact that it was like, you don't really know, like, he gets hit, he falls behind the curtain, but it's like, well, is there some way that he could have survived? And I mean, it was just this big moment. And like in the movie, it just kind of felt like he gets hit, he falls behind the curtain, and then it's like, okay, well, we got to go. And it's like the whole movie just felt like it just rushed to an ending after that point. And it was like, could we not just have like a second to dwell on this?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, for real.
I mean, it just
like
took
focus on the trauma that Harry went through.
And it just felt like it just took all of the emotion out of that scene. And so it really turned me off of the movies from there.
Yeah. I watched that. What was the movie after that?
Half-Blood Prince.
Half-Blood Prince. Is that where they bring in the superintendent to be the headmaster? That's that woman. I forgot her name. She kicks out the twins out of school and they start their own business in that book, right? That's that one.
Is that book? Yeah, that must be that book.
Because the seventh book, they're not in school, right. Basically.
I'm pretty sure that was the sixth book. Dolores Umbridge.
That one, I don't think that one was that great. That one doesn't really stand out to me as far as the movie goes. The book stands out to me, but the movie doesn't really stand out to me. I think I stopped at 5 too. And I actually, because I think it's on HBO, and I watched it on there because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna finally finish these movies. And I watched the sixth one, and then I watched 7 and 8, or 7 part 1 and part 2, and like I fell back in love with Harry Potter with 7, with the part 1 and part 2 because like they actually told a story.
Yeah.
but like with 4 is what just like did it for me, because it was just like they went from challenge to challenge to challenge with nothing in between, like you said.
I mean, they easily wrote out half the story.
Yeah.
I mean, they completely changed. They completely changed the way that things worked, specifically so that they could take out an entire half of the storyline.
Yeah, and I expected a lot from that movie just because of how massive that book was, and how much happened in that book, and it's nothing. It's a shell of what the book was, and it's just utterly disappointing.
And I think in all honesty, there's a lot to be said for making a show out of a book rather than a movie, because with any kind of decently lengthed book, it is so incredibly difficult to get all of the right stuff on screen within like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
At least if you're doing things as a show, even if it's like a 30-minute show that goes for 10 episodes in a season, that's 5 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, you can cover a lot of story with that.
I mean, you can cover so much more in a show than you can with a movie.
Yeah. And like book to video adaptations, I do prefer the TV shows over the movies.
Yeah, and in all honesty, kind of, on the state of like comic book movies and everything, and I know that people haven't been terribly responsive to a lot of the superhero shows. Like DC is kind of winning that front, because you have like the Arrowverse, which people do latch onto.
Yeah.
But like I don't feel like any of the Marvel TV shows have really taken off all that much.
And they were done. Or I guess are you talking about the Netflix one, or are you talking about the other ones on regular TV?
Kind of both. Like I mean, we're talking about the Netflix ones, like Shield, like talk about like the various X-Men ones, the Inhumans one.
Yeah. There's one on Hulu now.
Yeah.
Even.
Now probably my favorite out of those, aside from maybe the Netflix ones, is Legion. Actually,
Legion is awesome. That's the only one that I've really gotten into.
Yeah, like that one is extremely well done. I hope that in all of this transition and everything that it makes it through, because I really like it. I really want to see where they're going with it, because I have my own theories about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a good show.
But it is a really good show. It's really well done. But I think in general, X-Men storylines would do better as TV shows.
Yes.
Because typically in the X-Men storylines, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. And a lot of times it can be a lot that's kind of more political in nature. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like in a movie, you oftentimes don't get really the chance to develop those thoughts and ideas and still be able to put together a superhero action movie.
Yeah, because you're confined to an hour and a half or at most 2 hours.
At this point, 2.5 hours.
Oh yeah, I guess it is kind of
in-game is like straight up 3 hours.
Yeah, yeah, but they've done really well with the MCU.
And you know, no spoilers or anything, but I will say that Endgame being a 3-hour movie, it does not feel like a 3-hour movie.
Really, like it just flies by. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh man, I want more.
Yeah, it does not feel like a 3-hour movie at all.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to. I know everybody else has watched it, but but I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I'm probably not going to watch it in theaters,
and that's fair.
Yeah, I'm probably going to wait till it's on either Netflix or the new.
Depending on where everything lands, I don't know if it's going to be on Netflix or if it's just going to be on Disney's thing.
Yeah, and their pricing model's not bad. It's like what, $8.99, something like that.
I think it was something like that.
And that includes the kids movies, like the traditional mm-hmm. like old school Bambi and Snow White and all that kind of shit. Their TV stuff and MCU all on one service. They're not splitting it up like we thought that they were going to do.
And they've already started planning original content as well.
I hope they crank out some X-Men TV series or something like that.
Like I said, I think really X-Men almost needs to be TV related instead of a movie.
They'd be shooting themselves in the foot if they put it out as a movie. Look at the animated series X-Men. Mm-hmm. Like that's one of the biggest Marvel TV shows ever.
It really is. Like that, or maybe the Spider-Man cartoons.
Yeah, and they like you said, like there's so many things going on in the background, and they showed that in the animated series that we woke up every Saturday morning to watch.
Absolutely.
And I want that. I want that again with X-Men. Mm-hmm. And the movies just aren't cutting it.
Yeah.
Especially Apocalypse.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess regrettably, we really do kind of need to close up. Once again, we're pressing going on too long.
Yeah.
But anyways, thanks for tuning in this week, and we hope you join us again next week when we have something more to podcast.
See, you get it right. Like I fuck it up all the time.